Live from Atlanta, Georgia, it's the Zach Ballinger Show, where we help you find direction through passion and purpose. My name is Zach Ballinger, your host. Excited to be here with you today. I've got a very special guest in this studio, virtual studio, Dr. James Griffith. James, thank you so much for joining the show today.
Yeah, thank you, Zach. It's an honor to be here. Pleasure to be here.
So, full disclosure, me and James actually grew up together. We're really good friends. James is a PharmD. I'll let you introduce his title in a minute. And just glad to reconnect, have you back on the show and talk about your career as being a pharmacist. So I kind of gave it away a little bit, but let me give away the format to the new listeners that are listening. So basically we do a 9-question round. It's a lightning round. It's designed to be 9 quick questions just for the audience to learn more about your background. Then we'll dive into a little more in-depth questions about being a pharmacist. We'll end the show with questions. If anybody has any questions out there, feel free to enter them in the comments on Facebook or YouTube if you're listening live. And as well as we had some come in through email. So does that sound fair enough?
Sounds great.
All right. So what is your, I kind of said pharmacist, but what is your specific occupation and your title?
The title is a Doctor of Pharmacy. So that's a 4-year degree that you get usually after college to be able to go into pharmacy and get licensed within a state. And then I'm a retail pharmacist, or some people would call it a community pharmacist. And specifically, I work at an independent pharmacy. So it's an independently owned retail community pharmacy. And
so how many years have you been a pharmacist?
I have been a pharmacist since 2014. So that's 5-6 years.
And what do you like most about being a pharmacist? What is it kind of you're passionate about it?
I enjoy the people and being able to help the people in the community. Pharmacy is still a profession that's well respected for the most part, and because you're helping people and you're doing it on a daily basis, and people trust you and rely on you to help take care of their health and their medicines, and that's important to people. Especially those that are struggling with healthcare and in their health. And so it's very rewarding in that respect.
And, on the flip side, this is kind of a tough question for folks to be put on the spot with. But, I asked you, what do you like about your job? But what are some of the things you don't like about your job?
Well, right off is insurance. That's pretty easy in the pharmacy world because almost every prescription we process, we have to deal with someone's insurance. And if it's a headache for patients should know it is definitely a headache for pharmacists because insurances today hold a lot of power in healthcare, and that affects me every day that I'm working in community pharmacy. And a lot of times I have to mediate between the issues and the struggles that we have with the patient's insurance and with the patient. And so that can be very frustrating and aggravating when you're trying to care for someone's health and you have to jump through those loopholes. So that is number one by far, the most aggravating aspect of retail pharmacy.
That makes sense. And you kind of mentioned it before, but, let's say somebody's out there and they're in high school, they're entering in college. What should we tell them as far as like education, training, certifications that they need to become a retail pharmacist?
Yeah, pharmacy is a very fluctuating career path. I began pharmacy school in 2009. And I had a bachelor's degree, and by that time I also had a master's degree, and neither one of those were really in the sciences or math. I had to go back after my master's degree and pick up a few prerequisites in sciences and math in order to meet prerequisites for certain university that I wanted to attend. And so, usually in today's time, with the competitive market of healthcare, you usually have to have at least a bachelor's degree. And so usually, you're looking at 2 to 4 years. Some schools you can apply after an associate's degree with 2 years of training, but usually it's a bachelor's degree, and then you apply to pharmacy schools. And, they only have so many seats per class, and so there's some competitiveness there about getting enrolled. And then after that, it's usually a 4-year degree. There's one school here in East Tennessee in Knoxville that you can go year round and have a pharmacy degree, doctor's degree after 3 years.
Gotcha. Thanks for walking us through that. And the next question would be, what does a typical day look like? So let's say somebody was going to job shadow you for a day. Walk us through what a day looks like.
Well, you show up on time, you unlock those doors and the people.
Important.
Yeah, exactly. That is important. And it's very important. It is in retail pharmacy. Some jobs you can show up late, but when you're as a pharmacist, you are liable and responsible for the pharmacy. And so the pharmacy legally is not supposed to be open without a licensed pharmacist there. And so, if you don't show up on time, the pharmacy is not supposed to be open. And so you show up and, that's a big deal to make you're sure that you're someone that can be punctual. And then, it's a good work ethic that you need, really, because someone comes in and you immediately start processing prescriptions. You have to be savvy with technology. There's certain, numerous different programs that are used in operating a pharmacy to be able to process prescriptions through insurance and keep those records. And so, as a pharmacist, we have technicians that are hired that really help do some of the more regular roles as far as counting the prescriptions and filling the prescriptions. And really, as a pharmacist, what we're looking for mistakes that might be made in the process. We're comparing medications with other medications that the patient might be taking. There are times that we are contacting their physician's office to request changes or to suggest changes or to seek refills for medications, to help patients make appointments. A day has a lot of similarities, but at the same time, you're helping different people. And so every day is not exactly the same, but every day is very similar. And in the pharmacy that I'm working at, it's independent retail. It's owned by a gentleman who's, his father owned the pharmacy. He's been in the pharmacy world for all of his life. People know him, people trust him and trust his pharmacy, and they trust his staff. And so it's a blessing to be able to help people in that way. And, you as a pharmacist, you are liable for every single prescription that goes out that door. And so you have to make sure that it is correct and it's meeting the healthcare needs of the patient. And that may seem simple, but when it's, when you're running 300 to 500 through a day and some more than that, there's a lot of responsibility there. And so you have to make sure that things are correct and have an eye for some detail while at the same time being able to benefit the patient and the customer.
That's a great answer. Just, if somebody's looking out just from what you said, they can really get a good picture of what a typical day looks like. And now when you were a kid, it doesn't have to be pharmacy. And I always say this, did you grow up wanting to be something? We all had kind of those dreams as a kid to be something. Did you ever grow up and want to be something?
Well, I remember as a freshman, my thoughts were I enjoy sports. And so my thoughts were when I was a freshman in high school that I wanted to be an athletic trainer. And so I had I had healthcare in mind even at a younger age. But then when I was a junior in high school, I felt called to ministry. And so I pastor a church, and that's my primary passion. That's really what I do. And then pharmacy came back around to me later on in life. My master's degree was through a seminary to help me in ministry. But when I finished that degree, I had been working in a pharmacy as a technician, and I was not married at the time and, still had a lot of time on my hands. And so I had sought some counsel and decided to continue on my education. And that's when I decided to go with pharmacy. So it's kind of interesting, my story. I didn't go right out of high school seeking a pharmacy degree. That kind of came around a little later on in my development for career. And it's something I love because really there are some similarities and overlaps between pastoring as well as the pharmacy field that I'm in because, you're primarily dealing with people and helping to meet the needs of people.
Yeah. And so you survived the lightning round and you did a great job, because the next question that I was going to segue into the long format of questions is, you're a pastor of a church, and that's your ultimate calling to God, and that's first. But I think if you look at being a pharmacist, and we just see, I think people have kind of a negative image when they go into the pharmacy. They're thinking, like you said, that insurance denied them their prescription and they blame it on the pharmacist, or you guys somehow get the blame for it, or, this is the price of the drug. And oh my goodness, what are you trying to do? Rip us off. And so I think it's a hard job, to be honest. But how does your passion for the church, and you kind of answered this already, but just take us back through, help you serve patients? Like, where you have that mission in life.
Yeah. And, that's really what helped to bring me into pharmacy. Because even as a pastor in ministry, I enjoyed doing medical mission trips to other nations. And I saw that being used as a way to meet people's physical needs, but also meet their spiritual needs. We understand that those are really connected. A lot of times we try to separate spiritual and physical, but there's a lot of connectedness between those two needs. And, it's interesting as a pastor, probably half the questions I get from my congregation are even like healthcare questions. It's kind of funny because they know I'm a pharmacist. And so they'll even come to me with those questions. But yeah, I mean, as a pastor, you learn to deal with people, and you want to try to do that in a forgiving way, in a graceful way, and you want to do that in a way that sacrificial, where you truly have empathy for the people that you're ministering to. And really, in pharmacy, from the worldview that I'm looking through, I'm ministering to them as I am doing pharmacy, because their healthcare needs are, also affecting them spiritually and physically. And so I'm able to minister to them through this profession of pharmacy. And, and you're right. I mean, they get agitated. The doctors change their prescriptions and they didn't know. And and you see this every day. There can be a number of reasons why a customer or a patient would become very frustrated or agitated. And, our healthcare needs are very important to us because it's vital for our living and our quality of life. And so rightfully so, many times patients can get aggravated or upset. And I had to learn very early on, even as a pharmacy technician before I went to pharmacy school, how to be able to deal with people who were mad at me and not take that offensively, and to realize that there's an underlying reason why they're really upset. And, most of the time, I mean, 80-90% of the time, it doesn't really have anything to do with me, but I'm the person they see. I'm the face that they see when they walk into the pharmacy. And so, that's really something that we pharmacists have to deal with. And some people deal with it better than others, because I've seen pharmacists who don't deal with that too well, and they know that and recognize that. And so they seek to make steps to make sure that there are other ways that they can help patients. But, for most pharmacists who are in the retail setting, you have to learn how to be able to deal with people and still help them. And many times patients see that, you help them solve an issue that they're having, and they may have come in really upset with you, but then they see that, if it weren't for you, this may not have been resolved. So in the end game, I've had patients apologize to me and, immediately, or they see that, we're really there to benefit them and to help them through this process. And they're, usually they end up being grateful for that. And I specifically remember a patient that one day he came to his pharmacy and he had a medication that we couldn't fill when he wanted it filled for legal reasons, and had to explain that and walk him through that. But he was still very upset. And 2 years later, he comes back in the pharmacy and he apologizes for me.
Wow.
For the way that he acted on that day. And that's just one instance that I remember. But as a retail pharmacist, that's something that you're going to encounter. And so if you're going to go into retail pharmacy, you have to know that you're going to encounter that, and hopefully be able to mold yourself in such a way where you're able to deal with that, for the rest of your profession. And there, in pharmacy world, there are other jobs that you can go into that you really don't have to deal with people.
And so hit on that. That's the other question I was going to ask you.
Yeah. I mean, you can still be a pharmacist and not be in retail. And retail is an odd animal. I don't know if animal is the right word to use, but
it is.
Yeah, yeah, it's a different world because at one time you're in the service of healthcare, but you're also retailing a product, and it's medication. I mean, out of all things, it's things that are helping people live and have a good quality of life. And if someone goes without a certain medication, it could be detrimental to them and their health. And so you're dealing with the product that has, the power of life, so to speak, but you're also in the service of healthcare, and you're selling this product. And man, that's a very fine balance. And you're dealing with people walking through that balance. But in pharmacy, probably 2/3 of the careers in pharmacy are in the retail setting. You can be in a community pharmacy that's independent, like I serve in, or you can work for a local chain or maybe one of the larger corporate chains. And those are all different animals, or as a pharmacist, you can work in hospital pharmacy. And really, hospital pharmacists rarely have to sit down with a patient. Now, so there are times when you have to, but it's a whole lot less than in the retail setting. And so there are some pharmacists who love pharmacy, but don't love dealing with people. I mean, they love people, but they find it very challenging to deal with them. And so they go into hospital pharmacy, and that is more of a clinical side of pharmacy than even retail. And then there are ambulatory care settings. There are research design settings for corporations. Some people have a mind that's very bent toward the science and the math of it, even more so than you see in retail. So they'll go into different areas of pharmacy. So there are other opportunities out there for pharmacists than just retail, but that's what we're most accustomed to seeing. So.
Right. When you think of pharmacy, you do think of that, or a pharmacist or PharmD,
Yeah.
but you're exactly right. There is so many careers you can go into as a PharmD. I'll give you one example in the pharmaceutical industry on the branded side. They employ many PharmDs, not only in the research side, but also as what they call a medical science liaisons, where they actually go out and talk to doctors about their branded drug or wherever it's at in their product lifestyle. I just had one on before you who was a medical science liaison. Now, he wasn't a PharmD like a pharmacist, but he had his PhD. So there's many different careers you could explore, but let's piggyback off that concept for a second, because I have talked to pharmacists that admittedly do not like their job. And my whole vision of the show and my books and everything is for you to love your job.
Yeah.
And I think the reason you actually love it, because you see it differently. Let me give you an example. So my grandmother, before she passed, she was in a rural setting like you are right now currently. So she didn't have a lot of interaction with her primary care doctor. She mainly interacted with her pharmacist, and that pharmacist was wonderful. Any questions she had, he almost went above and beyond that call of duty, where he was explaining her medications, side effects, maybe something she should call the doctor for, but he was at her beck and call. And you could tell he loved his job because he loved that patient service.
Right.
Isn't that kind of what you're saying when you say you have a greater mission? And that's what almost makes it like a calling for you, where you're actually passionate about the retail job.
Right. Yes. Yeah, I would say that with just about any profession, really. The pharmacy has a lot of benefits as far as a profession, because it's something, I only work 2 to 3 days a week in a pharmacy for an independent retail. There are not many professions that you can go into that are this beneficial and just do that. And I'm blessed and I've set myself up in that way because I know that my primary responsibility is to my church. And so that's where my focus is at. And so I'm able to work for an individual who owns his own pharmacy in this profession. And, he's like-minded like me. And so I'm able to work for him a couple of days a week in this profession, being able to benefit his customers and the patients there in that community. And so that's a plus to pharmacy. A lot of ladies would go into pharmacy because it works well with like maternity leave and having children and so on. But it's also a good, I guess, second profession is a way to say it too. But yes, I mean, definitely some people will go into a profession thinking about the money. And this profession is a blessing in that regard. There's benefits to the pay because of the liability that you carry, the responsibility that you carry, the importance of the job that you're doing. You get paid well compared to a lot of the other workforce. But if that's the reason you're going into any profession, you're going to end up hating it. I mean, there has to be a greater reason or a greater calling to why you're going to do what you do. And and that is correct. That's why in pharmacy, I just enjoy doing it, is because I know that I am benefiting people with one of their greatest needs in life, and they value that. And in the medical field, in healthcare, one of the things that really separates pharmacy is that you can pick up your telephone and you can speak to a professional pharmacist within like 5 or 10 minutes. I mean, there are very few other professionals in healthcare that you can do that with. And that really sets pharmacy apart in the healthcare world, that patients really rely on their pharmacists. Many of them do, like you said, like with your grandmother, and they know if their pharmacist really cares for them or not, and they're going to rely on that. And man, that really fulfills a deeper need than your wallet or your paycheck. And I would say that's probably true in any profession. There has to be that greater reason or that greater calling to why you're doing it. There has to be a passion behind it for you to really enjoy it, because you can, man. If you go into pharmacy, there's a lot of things that are mundane in pharmacy. I don't get a lunch break really. A lot of pharmacists don't enjoy that. I'm blessed to be able to have a stool at times where I'm working, but a lot of days I'm on my feet, and in pharmacy school, I remember that was discussed, that you need to make sure to take care of your body as a pharmacist, because you're going to be on your feet a lot. And that's just a minor thing that we wouldn't really think about. But there are a lot of things that you would hate as a pharmacist if you don't love the greater reason behind the reason why you're doing it. So.
Yeah. And I'm out when you said there's not a lunch break. I couldn't do it then.
Yeah. And that's changing some in the retail world. And I'm not complaining where I'm at, but yeah, that's one thing. A lot of times you'll hear pharmacists really complain about that because any other healthcare profession, most of them are going to find time for a lunch break.
Right. And think about when you go to the pharmacy, most patients go at lunchtime, especially if they're at work. So
yes, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah. Go ahead, Zach. I'm sorry.
So, I always challenge people, no matter what career they're in, they always have to be doing career development. That's one of my big things, because even for people that absolutely love their job now and they're making a good living or whatever it might be, that could change. And in a heartbeat, you think about the coronavirus, how people, before they loved a certain industry, and now, with coronavirus, it's kind of changed the game. So I think there's always room for development. But talk about your career development. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? What are your long-term goals as far as a career? Do you have any, I guess?
Oh yeah. Yeah. My dream is to be able to own my own pharmacy, and to meet the needs of my own communities. And so I'm working for a gentleman now, and I'll drive about an hour. I specifically, as I was going through pharmacy school, I knew that I wanted to work in the independent retail pharmacy world. So I already had that lined out, and then I've developed the dream, or had the dream, that I would like to own my own and operate my own retail independent pharmacy. And so I purposely set up myself to seek employment in independent retail, to be able to have that development and that job experience, and to really learn, from these owners that already own their own. And usually in the pharmacy world, pharmacists try to be connected. We try to benefit and help one another and feed off each other. And that really helps our development. So yeah, within the next 5 or 10 years, I'm really hoping and praying and would love to, own my own pharmacy and be set up serving needs of my own communities in that way. Because I would love that, just because I love the people that I'm around, and we want to benefit them in that regard. And so, I'm seeking to develop myself so that I can accomplish that dream. And then really, as a pharmacist, depending on what state you're licensed in, you're required to do continuing education. And, that does change. Usually, those continuing education is offered by different schools or other entities. And usually they offer something compared to the times that we're living in. Opioid crisis has been a big deal. And then of course the coronavirus now that we're dealing in. And so every year we have to get 15 hours in Tennessee. In Tennessee, it's 30 hours every 2 years. And then I'm also licensed in Kentucky, and you have to get 15 hours every year. And so you're continually trying to polish your skill and your education, your knowledge about pharmacy and the different medications and how to benefit your patients.
Great answer. One of the things that I have coming up in my new book in the fall of Don't Be a Zombie, How to Find a Career You Love, is I talk about this. Is a lot of people come to me and they want to own their own business. And I think that's very exciting. They want to be an entrepreneur. But one of the things I encourage entrepreneurs to do is job shadow or work with a consultant or go part-time or do it as a side hustle. Because most of the time people jump feet first. So they jump off the dock before the boat's even to the dock. Yeah. Because what you're doing, I think, smart, because you're learning the inside out of the business. You're furthering developing your career. You're seeing if it's still something, a calling that you want to do, and you're learning the operations. And who knows, maybe after 2 or 3 years, you might say, this is great, but I may decide. But it sounds like you're pretty set on it. But for other people that are out there that are, like half and half, well, should I own my own business? You really have to spend time with somebody in business, or you have to take a part-time job or an entry-level job to see this. Like restaurants is a great example. Most restaurants fail. Let's just be honest. And so, you want to go in with somebody who owns a restaurant that's successful, has an operation. You can learn from their operation side. And at the end of the day, you may say, look, I just wanted to be a cook, man. I didn't want to own my own business. Yeah. So you're doing a smart thing by that development route. So thank you so much for sharing that. And then a quick question, and then we'll take questions from the audience. This is outside of the career paradigm, but what do you like to do outside of work for fun? Hobbies?
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm a husband and a father, so I love my family. They're awesome. Being a dad is awesome. Being a husband's awesome. And I love my church. That's a job. I get paid for that profession, but really, I don't do it for that. And I love the people of my congregation, my community. Love UT football. No shame. love football and UT basketball, and so my wife and family try to take advantage of that as much as we can. I was raised in a rural area, so I love to take an ATV and hit the mountains. Love to go fishing. My wife loves to hunt, so I was raised kind of in that environment and enjoy doing that. Love friends. I love just spending time with people, and especially my friends and family. So it's a good life. It's a good life when you love what you do, and you're around those you love. And so, I would encourage that. Make sure whatever job you go into, it gives you the opportunity to still live. My father always said, let's see, how did he say it? He says, you don't live to work, but you work to live. And there's a lot of wisdom behind that. And so, and that was good what you said, Zach, about owning your own business, because in the retail pharmacy, there's a plenty of responsibility with just being a pharmacist. But man, owning a pharmacy takes the responsibility and the liability to a greater level. And it's tough right now. It really is. In the retail pharmacy world, it's not as good as it used to be to own your own pharmacy. And there are a lot of independents that are closing their doors because of the struggle that is there with chains and with insurances. And so, you have to be wise because you don't want to shoot yourself in the foot, so to speak. You have to be wise about what you're doing.
Gotcha. And I think you kind of answered this question, but one of the questions that came in via email from a student is, I'm a junior in college, not really sure. I want to be in healthcare, but not really sure if I want to go the pharmacy route. What should I do? And you kind of answered that a little bit, but anything you want to expound upon?
Well, man, I was a pharmacy tech for at least 4 years before I went into pharmacy school. And that'd be a great job for someone to have who's going through college. If you need a side job, it would be a great opportunity if you're thinking about pharmacy school to, hey, go to your local Walgreens or CVS or independent pharmacy or another chain wherever you're at and apply to be a part-time tech.
And
Make a
they need them right now. So that's a great
yeah.
idea.
Yeah, I mean, make a little bit of money while you're going through college and see if that's something you want to do. I remember as a technician standing working, and man, I worked hard. We were busy, and I remember looking over to the guy next to me one day, and the thought ran through my head: he's working. I'm working as hard as he is, but he has invested in himself to have the knowledge that he has had, and he's making 5 times more than I'm making. I'll go to pharmacy school.
Right.
So I would, if you can get a job as a tech, do that just for a little while, at least check it out. Try to job shadow, like you've mentioned, Zach. Try to spend a couple of days in a pharmacy and just see what it's like and see if something you want to pursue. But you really want to do that. And usually, even if you go in applying to pharmacy schools and you have experience as a pharmacy tech, that's even going to help you stand out, in the competitiveness of getting enrolled into a pharmacy school, because you already have that experience. And so you're less of a risk to a school to enroll you, because you're more likely to stick it out through the pharmacy degree because they know you already have this experience in this profession, and so yeah, I would just really strongly encourage that.
You mentioned one more thing too. It's in the book, is that you talked about networking with other pharmacists and the relationships you had there. See, that's a real world concept, folks, where you use networking to develop your career. And that's
Yeah.
what I'm all about. You're LinkedIn, or you're face to face, or you're virtual, or you're on the phone. You got to be using your network to really
Yes.
build your career. So last question I had from another student that came in was, what kind of tests do they have to take? I guess they're wanting to apply for pharmacy school. I mean, it's probably better to find out all the information from the school, but I guess they just had an off the whiff question, like, what kind of
Yeah.
test? Is it the GRE?
No, it's usually pretty standard. You take what's called a PCAT. So
PCAT.
yeah, usually doctors will take like an MCAT, I think.
Right.
Then there's the PCAT, and of course the P stands for pharmacy. But most schools require a PCAT, and I knew exactly which school. I only applied to one school. I knew which school I wanted to go to and how I wanted to do it. Some people, may have several different ones in mind, and so you can usually find this on the school's website. You want to look on there, see what their prerequisite classes. So you want to make sure that in your degree, if you're looking at going to pharmacy school, you may have a degree in chemistry. A lot of bachelor's degrees have like a pre-pharmacy track, but you want to make sure that what school you think you want to go to, that you're meeting those prerequisite classes in order to get in. And then you also you're going to take the PCAT, and of course you can take it, multiple times to try to better your score, better your chances. And of course, the higher your score, it's a scaled test, and so the higher your score, the more valuable you look to a pharmacy school to be able to be enrolled. And so that's the main test, is PCAT. And then, of course, after you finish pharmacy school, you take a board exam that is national, that deals with pharmacy. You have to pass that board in order to be licensed. And then each state, another interesting thing with pharmacy is each state has their own set of laws that govern pharmacy and regulate pharmacy within the state. And so with each state that you want to be licensed in, the state gives you the license. You have to pass a law exam within that state. And so through your professional degree, you'll study for that law exam also.
Gotcha. Well, Pastor Dr. James Griffith, thank you so much for your insights. I know exactly who to call when I go on vacation to do the show.
There you go. Very good. Very good.
Thank you for being with us. Until next time, guys, take care. Thank you guys so much for joining. Have a great day.
Awesome. Thank you, Zach.